Matthew, how are you?
I'm good. How have you been? I've missed you.
I know, life is just not the same.
No. I mean, it's been, just over a year since Biden became president.
Yeah.
And it seems about that long since we did a podcast, so.
Do you remember when I called you in the fall and I said, what are you doing to get ready for immigration reform? Remember that?
Remember my response?
Yeah, you were like, what are you talking about? You're an idiot. And I was like, no, I really think something could happen. Because the thing is, what people don't understand, I don't think, is even a small change, like what immigration reform eventually got whittled down to in the Build Back Whatever, right? Build Back Better, was this very limited parole in place for only so many people. But even that would pretty overwhelmingly change our practice, right? You'd have to go through all your cases and figure out who's applying for one thing, who can now apply for this other thing. And so I was creating a spreadsheet with, all the clients, and you were right, it turns out.
Yeah. Tell me when it happens, then I'll get prepared. It's been an interesting year, right? So if you were going to grade the Biden presidency, let's first start with immigration.
Okay.
That's what we kind of deal with.
Yeah, it is.
What grade would you give him?
Well, it's interesting because Biden ran on being not Trump. And that's true. He's mostly not. But even on that scale, he fails on certain things, which I think we can get into. But the major good that's come out of the administration has been, we should consider it sort of a pause, really, is what happened, right? So the advancement of certain things, I'm sure there were other draconian measures coming down the line from the Trump administration. Those things have been shelved and aren't moving forward. And that's a good thing. But in terms of not being Trump, he does seem to fail on that too, because the administration is vigorously defending certain Trump policies in court, including Title 42 exclusion. And so he's not even good at not being Trump.
Yeah, well, I mean, about the whole family separation, there's a lawsuit going on about that. And they were getting ready to settle that because they acknowledged that when the Trump administration, the way they separated families in the zero tolerance policy was abhorrent. It was terrible. Something that we weren't going to stand for as a nation until Tucker Carlson and Brian Kilmeade kind of mocked him for going to settle these lawsuits. And so now they're in court vigorously defending Trump's zero tolerance family separation policy.
Right. Democrats have always been afraid of their own shadow, and they're afraid of right-wing framing. But if the government commits a crime against a person or a family, and not just we detained you for an extra day. No, we literally disappeared your child out of pure negligence. Or worse, right?
Yeah, malice.
Yeah, we intentionally disappeared your children. The idea that you would give those families a little money seems like the right move. That's the least that we could do. And it gets framed, of course, on, right-wing media as we're just giving away barrels of cash to people as a reward for having entered illegally. And they tucked their tail and ran from that perfectly reasonable position. Rather than explain it, rather than, push back, they just immediately folded, which is very heartening.
For people who might be finding this podcast for the first time, and when we speak about immigration law, we're generally talking about people who are subject to deportation, asylum law, things like that. We are not talking about business immigration. So me and Stephen don't know jack about business immigration. I understand things are still bad with business immigration. Maybe some things got better. Maybe some things got worse. But we are not going to talk about that because honestly, Stephen, do you know?
No, but I mean, we could have somebody on. We've had colleagues on to talk about that before.
I've probably kind of snoozed through those.
I mean, I would be interested to see if there's at least been a course correction in that area. My understanding is not really.
So when I look at our area that deals morely with, removal, deportation, asylum, and all that, the only real tangible positive I can see was the Attorney General rolling back matter of AB and matter of LEA. And these were two cases from the Trump administration that kind of did away with asylum based on domestic violence and family relationships. And these make up a huge percentage of my cases. So I've had a few cases that have been granted asylum in the past year that would have been denied under Trump. So we're going to put that one in the win column.
Yeah.
Now, they're supposed to be putting out regulations that are going to further define what they call a particular social group that hopefully is going to include some gender-based groups in domestic violence and things like that in family. That's going to clarify it for, a lot of these immigration judges around the country. They haven't yet done that. They were supposed to do that months ago. So they get a incomplete on that. But
we do have, if you remember, we agreed to take a pro bono asylum case once we hit 100 patrons, which we did. And the individual hearing is coming up. Actually, it's next week. And it's a case that, we'll see what happens. But I think it may very well turn on matter of AB being overturned by the Attorney General. So
if we lose it, do we have to give the money back?
If we lose the case, I don't know how that works exactly.
We'll just not mention it.
Anyhow, so yeah, there are those things.
So what other positive things?
As you know, there's a U visa for victims of crimes. And there's been this issue going back to the Obama administration of pretty extreme delays in U visa processing. They're still working on cases from 2016. And when I started practicing, a U visa would take about 10 months to a year from application to approval, card in hand, right? And now like I said, they're working on cases that were filed 5 or 6 years ago. So the Biden administration came out pretty early and said, you know what, for people who are waiting, their case seems to be prima facie eligible. We're going to issue a 4-year work permit, no filing fee. You don't even need to apply for it. We're just going to send you a work permit for 4 years to sort of tide you over until we can actually rule on your case. And that was a huge announcement. We were all really excited. And then since the announcement in June, I've had maybe a handful of those trickle through.
Yeah, I've had a few.
But I haven't had any since, I don't know, maybe October or something. And so that's another example of something I think well-intentioned and good, but then we look at just the basic functioning of what's going on with immigration, and the whole thing still seems pretty broken. And I think that's a testament. Immigration has been broken for a while, broken from our perspective, right? From the perspective of other people, it's working just as it should. But I do think when you have an administration for 4 years who's not interested at all in making anything better, and for 4 years, they were rejecting U visa applications because you left the middle name blank on one page, literally. So that's what that office was working on, going through and rejecting all these applications. Not to give the Biden administration too much credit, but I do think reviving an agency like a USCIS is not going to happen overnight. Now, will it happen in the next year? Are they really interested in fixing some of these things? Just the massive work permit backlogs and delays we're seeing. I mean, I don't know. We'll see.
I'm starting to see some cases move a little bit quicker. So, yeah. But there was a whole thing in the continuing saga of the prosecutorial discretion, right?
Yes.
From DHS in order to alleviate the immigration court backlog, which has been, in my consideration, almost a complete joke. I've had some cases that it's been beneficial for, but for the most part, it's just a frustrating process of trying to work with the Department of Homeland Security in kind of thinning the immigration court's docket. And it's very clear that the Department of Homeland Security has absolutely no desire to alleviate the backlog.
Right.
None. I don't see any desire on their part. And it's really frustrating because, so one thing we do in immigration court are waivers. And it might be something they call like a 212H waiver. It's just a waiver because the person did something bad that doesn't make them admissible as a permanent resident. So they need to ask for forgiveness. Now, lots of times we file these with USCIS, and some line adjudicator in some big warehouse in the Midwest is looking at your paperwork and deciding whether to grant it or not. Now, when it's in the immigration court, a trained attorney can't figure out how to look at an application and decide whether or not they can agree just to have it granted. I have this one case where I spoke with the government attorney. He said, yeah, everything looks really good. I just want to get a few things on the record, and I'm sure it'll be granted. So the case got continued because the judge wasn't in that day, and I emailed him. I said, look, we were both in agreement, right? So can we just do a joint stipulation to relief? No. So we have to wait to go back to court to have what will probably be a 10 to 15 minute hearing.
Right.
But why?
Yeah.
But why? Why? What does he think is going to happen in court that my client's going to get up on the stand and admit to like eating babies? Like, is that like, you know what? I was actually a Nazi and you caught me. You know, I mean, come on.
You're right. Yeah. I had a case even recently where the person had a pending U visa, and I just filed a motion to administratively close, and ICE didn't even respond to the motion. And the immigration judge denied, saying a U visa is collateral relief and she can continue with her removal proceedings regardless of whatever she's seeking with USCIS, which is an example of the immigration court itself not particularly being interested in alleviating its own backlog, which, according to memos and things that have been released, they're supposed to be actively trying to do. And so it is very strange. And it's strange to sort of have these cases where the prosecutors say, well, you know, I'm not totally sure, but I'll leave it up to the judge, but I can't agree to anything, but I'll tell the judge that I won't appeal. You know, rather than just saying, it looks like the burden is here or it's close enough, let's just agree 5 minutes. We can get the thing filed and the case will be taken care of. So we're still doing a lot of, like you're describing, going through the motions.
But so the thing is, there's no clear, decisive direction from the top of these agencies. Because you think about it as a government attorney, right? What does it matter to them? They get paid a salary. They work 4 days a week. I think they have 10-hour days. At least the ones in Philadelphia, I don't know, out there. They don't have to take work home with them, right? They open up the file. They have a hearing. They open up the file. They review it. The hearing's done. They close it. It doesn't matter. If they dismissed 50% of the cases on the immigration court docket, those attorneys are still going to work every day. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Right? And they don't get paid by the case, or they don't get docked for like not completing cases or whatnot. And it's the same thing for the judges, right? They're going to go to court. They have a case. They hear it. They make a decision. They write the decision or speak the decision or whatnot, and they move on to the next one. So if you cut their workload in half, their caseload in half, they're still doing the same thing. So honestly, I don't think they care. I mean, it affects us and our clients a lot more than it affects them.
When they say, because I hear this a lot from ICE attorneys, they say, I can't stipulate, but I won't appeal, this is the classic, like, nod and a wink to the judge that, like, if you were to grant, you could do a short order. You don't have to, like, describe your reasoning. You can just check a box on a form because I'll waive appeal. But when they say that they can't stipulate, I guess that's sort of my hang up. Like, first of all, why? Like,
management.
Or-
Do they call it management where you are?
I don't know. Probably. I mean,
they always say like, "Oh, we have to go talk to management."
okay. So if they, in other words, if they stipulate, they then have to go before a supervisor and articulate the reasons why they agree.
Maybe,
Is that the, like they have to have a little mini hearing with their boss?
maybe I've been meaning to ask them. I had this one asylum case just recently that was the judge said, and he was a former private attorney for decades. I mean, he's been a judge for probably over a decade now. And he said it was the most heart-wrenching statement, affidavit that he's ever read. It was unbelievably horrible things that happened to this poor woman. And the DHS attorney agreed, like, there were no questions on about what happened. We just asked a few things around the edges, for eligibility concerns. And most of it was, you made this statement. Was it true? Here's this psychological report. Was this true? Your credible fear interview. Was this true? So at the end of all this, and she already told me, this poor woman, I feel really bad for her, blah, blah, blah. At the end, the judge says, what's the government's position? And she says, I defer to the court, which is fine. But I kind of want to go back and ask her, like, why can't you say it should be granted?
The burden has been met.
Just why can't you do that? Like, and I've had it done before.
Right.
I mean, I guess I did have one recently where the government attorney did say it should be granted. But he's like one of those old school, like he's been a government attorney for like decades.
Do you remember Jonathan Love? Shout out to Jonathan Love.
Johnny. Is he a listener? Is he a Patreon?
I sure hope so. He was an ICE attorney who went to jail for forging some documents in order to try and get someone deported. But I had a hearing with Jonathan Love, probably, I want to say 2012, 13, around there, where, the guy had, I think, like 5 or 6 kids and a U.S. citizen spouse. And in terms of cancellation, like, there was some hardship there. It was mostly a volume case, right? The sheer number of qualifying relatives. It was a strong case, don't get me wrong. But we sat down and he sort of looked at the guy and was like, you're going to stay out of trouble, right? Yeah. All right, let's just agree on this. And we stipulated, and the hearing took 5 minutes. And maybe other practitioners are having different experiences in other places. But here, I've had some very strong cases, some pretty compelling cases that are not only not being stipulated to, I'm getting really crazy. I had a cross-examination of this woman drag on and on where the ICE attorney was asking, do your kids get free lunch at school? How do you contribute to the United States? And this is all in light of these Biden memos, right? That are, it's a kinder, gentler DHS. And it just hasn't been my experience. And so there's no reason why we can't have more hearings like the Jonathan Love hearing I explained, because by the time we get to court, if you've done your job, you've filed several hundred pages of good, relevant evidence, maybe a brief, explaining your position. And at that point, DHS has probably done nothing. Really, the hearing very rarely reveals anything new or substantive.
Sure, why not? Substantive?
Anyway.
Oh my God, you've been catching my disease.
I got Archambault. Anyways, so yeah, it's been very, very frustrating.
I just have the kind of that annoying type of standoffishness, This might be a symptom of, there are some trial attorneys that you're dealing with that don't like the kinder, gentler thing, so they're pushing back. Getting back to Biden and his immigration policies, I think overall it has been pretty terrible. I think if we didn't have Trump immediately preceding him, I think everyone would be like absolutely horrendous.
Horrified.
Right?
Right.
And of course, if we didn't have Trump preceding him, there wouldn't have been any reason to what Garland did with Matter of AB and LEA and all that. He wouldn't have had to reverse those things. But I mean, he's just been a complete disappointment. Mayorkas has been just a joke. He's down at the border, kissing the asses of the Border Patrol who hate him. So imagine it. So Mayorkas, who's the head of Department of Homeland Security, the Border Patrol doesn't like him. Some people in the Border Patrol don't like him. And I guess he went down to one thing and some people like stood up and gave him their back and were really getting on him. And they were saying, oh, now we're not doing our mission anymore because we're spending all our time processing these migrants coming in. But that is their job. Like, that's like part of their job. But what they're really upset about is, I guess under Trump, they were able to like drive around in their Jeeps in the desert with each other on the radio, make like sexist and racist jokes, yuck it up. And they would have to go in the office a couple hours a day to fill out paperwork. And I guess now they're just stuck in the office doing part of their mission, because part of their mission is to process people who come in or who attempt to enter the United States. And so instead of Mayorkas just telling these people, you know what, just do your job. Like, if you don't like it, go get a job at Walmart as security. Go. Who cares? Right?
I don't know if they'd be qualified.
They probably don't. But then he just spends his whole time kissing their about how valuable they are, how brave they are. He's just embarrassing. And I'm going to give Biden a D-. And the only thing that keeps him from getting a complete F is Garland overturning AB and LEA. But I could be persuaded to an F.
The thing about a lot of this stuff, even like the stuff that isn't straight line connected to Biden himself, like the work permit delays, like there's simple fixes for a lot of this stuff. Like they can automatically extend work permits in categories where they're facing delays. And even like some of the work permit regulations that were put into place by Trump, the administration is still fighting for those in court. And I've spoken to a lot of people who have had work permits. One family, they've had work permits for over 10 years. They're trying to do everything right. And because of these regulations that were passed by Trump in August of 2020, they don't have work permits anymore. And it's like, well, why hasn't Biden fixed that? And there's no reason. In other words, like one of the things that drives me nuts about this is like, you can talk about the political price of doing a major overhaul, or even though I think most immigration reform is very popular, like the DREAM Act would actually be popular. But the truth is, no matter how you slice it, most of this stuff is small bore and could go completely unnoticed. Like just fix it, make it better for people. And even like when immigration reform got whittled all the way down to basically a parole in place program, humanitarian parole in place exists now. Like we've gotten it for clients before, and we have a number of applications pending. All you would really have to do is have the administration clarify, basically make it a little bit easier to qualify for it. And you would have your immigration reform like right there. And instead, I don't know that anything that they seem to be on any path to like fixing any of it, which is what's so frustrating.
Yeah, you're right. And the fact that not only have they failed to do things, right, they're continuing to do things that they don't really need to do.
Right.
They're simple, like he could have easily done TPS for Central America and Haiti, or whomever he wants to do TPS for, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, whatever you want to do it, right? They can do that, but they're always worried about, what is Tucker Carlson going to say? What are they going to say? What's Brian Kilmeade and Peter Doocy going to say, in the morning? It's like the latest controversy is this breaking news, this like great investigative reporting that migrants from the border are being flown to shelters across the country.
Wow.
And this is big breaking news. The other one was that migrants from the borders are being able to utilize the documents that they're given by Border Patrol to get on an airplane as identification. Now, this is something that happened all during Trump's administration. It's been going on for decades. This is just what happens. But now the right wing comes out and they start pounding this like this is some nefarious plan by Biden. And they're even saying to impeach Biden over this. And what's the reaction from the Biden administration? They're like, they're scared.
Right.
They're scared. But why? So if you're going to get for doing stuff that's always been done, just do the other stuff because you're going to get anyways. It doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter what they do. If they do something that Trump has been doing, they're going to get. If they give TPS to Haitians, they're going to get. So just do it. One, it's just the right thing to do. And that should be the most important. And two, I think from a political standpoint, I think it benefits you because how excited are you for a Biden re-election campaign?
Yeah, I mean, about as excited as I was the first time around. But yeah, I mean, if we have 4 years...
I would not vote for him. And I'm going to be that guy. And I kind of made fun of those guys before.
Yeah.
But I would not vote for him again.
I think it's too early for me to have that conversation. But I would just say, like, if you look at a state like Arizona, right? I mean, that state gets won not because he's such a great guy and an amazing candidate, but because he made promises. And to be clear, on immigration, he didn't promise just to not be Trump. He was, more aggressive with his platform than that. But Arizona gets won because of the young people, the Latinos, the Hispanics who went out and they sacrificed. It sucks to do politics. I mean, what do you want to do on your weekend? You want to knock doors of strangers who are mostly rude to you? So, or to phone bank and all this stuff. This is not how people choose to spend their free time. But people did, and they busted their ass, and they made the difference. They won that state. And so whether or not you or I sitting here in our offices choose to vote for him is like really inconsequential. The question is going to be like, the people who sacrifice their valuable time and money and put their reputations on the line with their family and friends to turn out to vote in places like Arizona, are they going to be willing to do that again if after 4 years they're looking around, they're going, we still don't have DACA, their work permits are taking a year and a half, or, their family's been deported? Probably not, right?
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. Like, how motivated are people going to be? Who knows who's going to run on the Republican side? Is it going to be Trump again? Is it going to be DeSantis? It's who knows? But we know they're probably going to be awful, and then we're going to fall into the same trap again. Well, at least he or she who's ever running is not as bad as that guy, and unfortunately, I think Biden plays off of that. Because you see, anytime he's questioned about it, would you rather have Trump? Like, if you asked me to go over and do it again, if it was between Biden and Trump, I would still choose Biden. But man, he's got to do better.
This is what we've always said, right? We've always said that there's a difference between bad and worse, right?
Yeah.
Obama was bad, Trump was worse. But what's so frustrating, and we've already illustrated, like, Biden has been better. You've won cases that you won because of Biden that you wouldn't have won before. But what's so frustrating is he's trying as hard as he can to make that distinction like as small as possible.
Well, I mean, how about we compare Biden to Obama?
Yeah, he's not even as good as Obama.
Yeah, he's worse than Obama.
Yeah,
so
right. And what's going on with DACA? Do you know anything about the DACA litigation?
Not anything. I don't know a thing. I don't know.
What a show.
I mean, they're not doing new DACAs. I mean, we're still getting them renewed. We're getting advanced, travel permits.
Right.
So that's helpful. But
well, that seems like another thing that they should be able to fix in a month. Whatever it is that this judge in Texas wants them to do, just cure the problem. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there'll probably be another problem, but the thing is their lack of fight, I guess. It's really frustrating. I mean, there are a lot of bad things, but one of them is when you express your frustrations with Biden, either you have the would you rather have Trump discussion on one end, or then you get Trumpy people who are like, oh yeah, and like he's a pedophile. And then all of a sudden you have to like start like defending
Biden, right?
Things like, oh yeah, well he's doing this, like he's flying these like young kids like from the border to New York, and isn't that horrendous? No, it's the same. So you have to start defending him. It's just I just want someone to get into office who is just gonna be decent. It would be nice. I don't know. Bar is so low.
I know. Well, Matthew, I've got an appointment.
Do you really?
It was good chatting with you.
So, yeah, to all our fans,
we're back, baby.
Yeah, and we're going to try to be somewhat regular. Now, this one was not real. We needed a show where we needed to kind of rant and get some stuff out. So hopefully we'll get back to having guests and things like that.
Right. Yeah, we'll try and find somebody good for next week.
Yeah.
We really only get compliments on the guests.
Well,
it was good talking to you.
Nice talking to you.
And I'll talk to you soon.
Go Sixers.
Uh-huh.